The day of the family dinner arrived with the sun hanging low in the sky, casting a warm glow over our home. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the familiar scents of garlic and rosemary wafting from the oven. My husband, Mark, had insisted on preparing his famous roast, a dish that always filled our home with a sense of comfort. However, as I chopped vegetables and stirred the sauce, a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. I felt unprepared for this gathering, not just because of the meal but due to the weight of unspoken tensions that lingered like shadows in our family dynamics. As I set the table, I thought about how long it had been since we had all been together. Mark's brother, Jake, was coming over for the first time in years. Their relationship had grown strained over misunderstandings and unresolved conflicts. I worried about what might surface during dinner. My heart raced as I recalled past arguments that had always left me feeling torn between them. Just as I was about to pour myself a glass of wine to calm my nerves, Mark walked into the kitchen with an unexpected smile. "Emily," he said, "I have a surprise for you tonight." I raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "What kind of surprise?" He leaned closer and whispered, "Jake is coming too." My heart sank. The last thing I wanted was to navigate through old grievances while trying to maintain a pleasant atmosphere for our guests. But before I could voice my concerns, Mark's excitement swept me along with it. As guests began to arrive, Mark's parents first followed by Jake, I plastered on a smile and welcomed everyone warmly. The initial moments were filled with laughter and small talk as we settled around the dining table adorned with my carefully arranged dishes. Yet beneath this facade of normalcy lay an undercurrent of tension that crackled like static electricity in the air. During dinner, I caught glimpses of Jake across the table. His easy laughter and genuine smiles contrasted sharply with my internal turmoil. Every time our eyes met, a flicker of something unnameable passed between us. It frightened me how quickly those feelings could resurface after so many years apart. As Mark recounted stories from their childhood, tales filled with pride, I felt increasingly disconnected from both men at that moment. After dessert was served and plates cleared away, I excused myself to gather my thoughts on the balcony where city lights twinkled like stars against the deepening twilight sky. Just as I took a breath of fresh air to steady myself, Mark stepped outside behind me. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. I nodded but felt anything but fine inside. Guilt gnawed at me like an insatiable beast as Jake joined us moments later. The three of us stood there awkwardly for a moment before Mark stepped away to grab more drinks from inside. In that brief silence shared between Jake and me, something shifted. The air thickened around us as we exchanged uncertain glances that lingered too long for comfort. Then came an unexpected whisper from him, "We kissed." The words hung heavy in the air between us, a confession barely spoken yet potent enough to ignite memories best left buried. My heart raced at his admission while simultaneously feeling an overwhelming wave of panic wash over me when Mark returned with drinks in hand. The evening continued without incident. However, beneath every laugh and cheerful toast lay an unspoken truth threatening to unravel everything we'd built together as family, my marriage included. As everyone began to leave after what seemed like hours spent navigating through social niceties while suppressing emotions bubbling just beneath the surface, tension escalated again when Mark pulled Jake aside for a whispered conversation. I pretended not to notice but couldn't help stealing glances at them from across the room as their expressions shifted from lighthearted banter to serious discussion within moments. A stark reminder that unresolved issues ran deeper than any superficial pleasantries exchanged during dinner. When they finally emerged from their huddle moments later looking less than pleased with one another's company, an uncomfortable silence settled back into place around us all once more, leaving me feeling even more adrift than before. As we bid farewell to our guests and closed up for the night, Mark's soft voice broke through my thoughts again, asking if everything was okay. I found myself struggling against emotions threatening to spill forth unbidden. Uncertainty clouded my mind while guilt clawed at my insides, relentlessly reminding me what had transpired earlier that evening. With each passing moment spent standing there under dimmed lights reflecting upon everything swirling within me, I realized this gathering would mark not just another family dinner but also serve as catalyst leading toward choices yet unmade, choices carrying consequences far heavier than any mere meal shared amongst loved ones could ever convey, the kind capable enough tearing apart lives forever if left unchecked. Mark's voice lingered in the air, a gentle reminder of the normalcy I was desperately trying to cling to. I forced a smile, nodding as I assured him I was fine. But deep inside, a storm raged. The evening had taken an unexpected turn, and now I stood at a precipice of my own making. As the last of the dishes were cleared away, I caught sight of David in the kitchen, his laughter mingling with the clinking of silverware. A warmth spread through me that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. How could I feel this way about my brother-in-law? I shook my head slightly, trying to dispel the thoughts creeping in. It was wrong, so very wrong. Just then, Mark excused himself, his phone buzzing insistently in his pocket. "I'll be right back," he said, glancing at me with concern. As he left the room, a silence enveloped the space where we had all gathered moments before. David moved closer, his presence drawing me in like a moth to a flame. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his eyes searching mine for answers I wasn't ready to give. I swallowed hard, fighting against the pull I felt toward him. "I'm just processing everything," I replied cautiously. But as we stood there alone, an electric tension filled the air between us. It was palpable and undeniable. In that moment of vulnerability, our hands brushed against each other on the counter. The touch sent shivers down my spine as our gazes locked together, intense and unyielding. "We kissed," he whispered barely above a breath. The words hung between us like an unspoken promise. Before my mind could fully grasp what was happening, David leaned in closer, our breaths mingled in that small space separating us. Just as quickly as it began, reality crashed back into focus when we heard footsteps approaching from behind. Panic surged through me as I stepped back instinctively. Mark returned just as David and I broke apart awkwardly, our faces flushed with guilt and confusion. "Everything okay?" Mark asked again, eyeing us suspiciously. "Yeah," I replied too quickly while avoiding David's gaze entirely. My heart raced as Mark continued to observe us closely. It felt like he could sense something beneath the surface, a secret bubbling just out of reach. As dinner wrapped up and everyone prepared to leave, my mind raced with conflicting emotions. Desire and guilt warred within me like two opposing forces battling for control over my heart and mind. I watched Mark say goodbye to his brother with an unsettling feeling gnawing at me. How could everything feel so right yet so wrong all at once? Once they left and silence enveloped our home again, I leaned against the kitchen counter, my heart still racing from what had transpired earlier that evening. The weight of my choices pressed heavily upon me. How could one moment change everything? Suddenly overwhelmed by guilt for what had happened, and what might happen next, I picked up my phone to distract myself from spiraling thoughts when a message flashed across the screen. "Can we talk?" It was David. My heart raced anew at those words. Part of me wanted to ignore it while another part craved clarity amidst chaos, a chance to understand what this connection meant for both of us moving forward without crossing any lines further than we already had. "Let's meet tomorrow," I typed back hesitantly before putting down my phone again, unsure if this would lead toward resolution or deeper entanglement into forbidden territory. The night dragged on painfully slow as sleep evaded me entirely. Instead, restless thoughts consumed every inch of my mind until dawn finally broke through, bringing with it an unsettling sense of dread mixed with anticipation for what lay ahead. Morning arrived too soon. Sunlight streamed through our kitchen window, illuminating dust particles dancing lazily in its glow, a stark contrast against turmoil swirling within me, still unresolved from last night's revelations about feelings shared but never spoken aloud since then. As Mark prepared breakfast while humming softly under his breath, a routine that once brought comfort now felt suffocating, I struggled against waves of uncertainty crashing over me like tides refusing to recede no matter how hard I fought them back. "Are you sure you're okay?" Mark asked again after noticing my distracted demeanor during breakfast preparation. "Just tired," was all I managed to reply before turning away from him, afraid he might see through my facade if given another moment longer than necessary. After breakfast concluded without incident, each bite tasted bland despite being made with care. I found myself staring out onto our porch where memories lingered long after they'd been created there together. But those memories seemed tainted now. The laughter shared now echoed hollowly compared against newfound desires threatening everything we'd built thus far. With each passing hour leading toward our scheduled meeting later today, I couldn't shake off feelings swirling deep inside, anticipation mixed heavily with fear about consequences waiting just around every corner. I stood in the kitchen, my heart racing as I tried to focus on the task at hand. The aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, but it was the tension that lingered between me and my brother-in-law, David, that truly overwhelmed my senses. We had shared a moment earlier, one that felt charged with unspoken words and undeniable attraction. I couldn't help but glance over at him, his presence both comforting and unsettling. "Do you need help with anything?" David asked, breaking the silence that had settled like a heavy fog around us. His voice was low, almost conspiratorial. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I nodded. "Just chopping some vegetables," I replied, trying to maintain a casual tone while battling the flutter in my stomach. As we worked side by side, our shoulders brushed against each other occasionally, sending sparks through me that I desperately wanted to ignore. The lights flickered suddenly, plunging us into darkness for a moment before the backup generator kicked in. My heart raced, not just from the surprise but from the sheer intimacy of being alone with him in this dimly lit kitchen. "Looks like we're on our own," he said softly, stepping closer as I fumbled with a knife. "I guess so," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. In that moment of uncertainty, our eyes locked. It felt as if time stood still. We were suspended in a world where nothing else mattered. Just then, my husband walked in unexpectedly. "What's going on here?" he asked with a raised eyebrow. Panic surged through me as David quickly stepped back, putting space between us. "I thought I heard voices." "Just preparing dinner," I said too quickly, forcing a smile that felt painfully strained. My husband nodded but seemed unconvinced as he glanced between us before heading back into the dining room. Once he was gone, David turned to me with an expression filled with concern. "That was close," he whispered urgently. The adrenaline coursing through me made it hard to think clearly. "I know," I replied breathlessly, feeling torn between exhilaration and guilt. "We can't keep doing this." But even as I said it, part of me yearned for more moments like this where our connection felt electric and alive. As dinner progressed and laughter filled the room again, I struggled to push aside thoughts of what had just happened in the kitchen. The conversation flowed easily among family members. They discussed everything from work to upcoming family events while I sat quietly lost in my turmoil. At one point, David caught my eye across the table and gave me a small smile, a reminder of our secret bond that no one else could see or understand. My heart raced again. It was both thrilling and terrifying. Later in the evening, when everyone began clearing dishes away from the table, David leaned over to whisper in my ear, "Let's get some fresh air." His breath tickled my skin and sent chills down my spine as he gestured toward the balcony door. I hesitated for only a moment before nodding and slipping outside with him into the cool night air. The city lights twinkled below us like stars scattered across an endless sky. It felt liberating being away from prying eyes for just a moment. "This is nice," he said softly as we leaned against the railing together. There was an intimacy here that made everything feel even more real, the thrill of being caught up in something forbidden yet exhilarating at once. "Yeah," I trailed off as his gaze locked onto mine again. It felt magnetic somehow, drawing me closer despite every rational thought screaming at me to stop this madness before it spiraled out of control. And then it happened. Our lips met briefly in an impulsive kiss that sent shockwaves through me as if igniting something deep within my soul. We kissed, a fleeting moment yet filled with passion and longing that left us both breathless when we pulled apart moments later. "I shouldn't have done that," I whispered hurriedly while glancing back toward the door leading inside where laughter still echoed faintly behind us. "Maybe not," he replied quietly but didn't step away from me either. Instead his hand found mine resting on the railing between us, a silent promise lingering unspoken yet palpable under starlit skies overhead. Suddenly there was movement behind us, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching fast, and panic surged through me again as reality crashed back down upon us both like icy water thrown onto flames ignited within seconds earlier. The footsteps grew louder, and I instinctively pulled my hand away from his, heart racing. I turned to see my husband stepping onto the balcony, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "What are you two doing out here?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "We just needed some fresh air," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel my brother-in-law's eyes on me, searching for reassurance that we weren't caught in something we couldn't escape from. As my husband leaned against the railing beside me, I noticed how his body language changed. He seemed more relaxed now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still on edge. "I was just talking to Jake about work," he said casually, but I could hear the underlying tension in his voice. "He mentioned some issues at the office." Jake shifted uncomfortably next to me, and I sensed the weight of unspoken words between us. My mind raced back to our earlier moments, the laughter we shared while cooking, our accidental touches that ignited sparks of something forbidden. I had to remind myself of my loyalty to my husband even as guilt gnawed at me like a relentless predator. "Let's head inside," my husband suggested after a moment of silence. "Dinner is almost over." Just as he turned to walk back into the house, Jake caught my eye again and motioned subtly toward the end of the balcony where it was quieter. My heart skipped a beat at the thought of being alone with him once more. I hesitated but knew this might be my only chance to talk without interruption. "I'll be right back," I said quickly to my husband before following Jake down the balcony steps. The night air felt electric as we stepped away from prying eyes. "Emily," he began softly, his voice barely above a whisper as we stood under the dim glow of a nearby streetlight. "I can't stop thinking about what happened earlier." My heart raced at his words. It felt both thrilling and terrifying all at once. "Neither can I admitted, feeling exposed yet exhilarated by our shared secret. He took another step closer, our breaths mingling in the cool night air as he continued, "What if we don't let this go? What if we explore what's between us?" His question hung in the air like an unanswered prayer. I felt torn between desire and guilt, my mind screaming for loyalty while my heart yearned for connection. Just then, I heard laughter coming from inside the house, a stark reminder of our reality. "We can't," I whispered urgently, glancing back toward the door where shadows danced across the walls. Jake looked pained but resolute as he responded softly, "Then let's make tonight count." My breath hitched in my throat, it felt like an invitation wrapped in danger. Before I could process what was happening or respond appropriately, Jake leaned in closer again, this time his lips brushed against mine in a fleeting moment that sent shockwaves through me. We kissed briefly before pulling apart with startled eyes wide open, both aware of how precarious our situation had become. Suddenly overwhelmed by guilt and fear of being discovered at any moment, I stepped back instinctively and broke away from him completely. "We shouldn't have done that," I said breathlessly. His expression shifted from desire to regret within seconds as he ran a hand through his hair nervously. The weight of our actions settled heavily upon us both like an invisible anchor dragging us deeper into murky waters we couldn't navigate alone. "I know," he replied quietly but firmly as if trying to convince himself too. Just then, my phone buzzed loudly in my pocket, shattering our fragile bubble of secrecy, and without thinking twice about it, I pulled it out only to see an incoming call from my husband labeled urgent. Panic surged through me once more as dread filled every inch of my being. What if he sensed something was wrong? Answer it, Jake urged quietly while glancing around cautiously as if expecting someone else to emerge unexpectedly from shadows lurking behind us. With trembling hands and a heavy heart weighing down on me like leaden chains binding me tightly together, I swiped across the screen reluctantly before putting it up to my ear. Hello? Emily. You need to listen carefully. My husband's voice came through frantic yet steady on the other end, a stark contrast against everything else swirling around us right now. Something's come up at work. I have to leave immediately. What do you mean? Confusion clouded over me momentarily while trying desperately not to glance over at Jake, who stood silently beside me watching everything unfold with bated breath. There's been an emergency meeting called. Something serious has happened. He paused briefly before adding urgently, I might be gone for several days. My stomach dropped upon hearing those words, the implications swirling around within me like storm clouds gathering overhead threatening rain without warning. As realization hit hard, this would give Jake and me time alone, time without restraints or constraints holding us back anymore. I understand, was all I managed to say before hanging up abruptly, feeling both liberated yet terrified by what lay ahead now. Turning back towards Jake, who seemed uncertain yet hopeful, our eyes locked once more, filled with unspoken promises waiting patiently beneath starlit skies above. We both knew this was just beginning. I felt a rush of emotions as Jake's gaze held mine, an unspoken understanding passing between us. The weight of my decision pressed heavily on my chest, yet the thrill of possibility ignited something deep within me. I had agreed to meet him later that night, and the thought sent shivers down my spine. As we stood there, the world around us faded away. The distant sounds of the city felt like a mere echo of reality. What do you want from this? Jake asked softly, breaking the silence. His voice was steady but laced with vulnerability. I hesitated, unsure if I could articulate what was swirling in my mind. I don't know, I finally admitted. I just feel drawn to you. The honesty surprised even me. It was a confession that both exhilarated and terrified me. The moment lingered until a sudden noise startled us both, a car horn blaring nearby. It jolted me back to reality, reminding me of the consequences that awaited if we continued down this path. We should go, I said, stepping back slightly as I fought against the urge to close the distance between us again. Jake nodded but didn't move away. Instead, he took a step closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. I can't stop thinking about you. My heart raced at his words, and for a fleeting moment, everything else faded away again. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from my husband. Hey, I'll be home later than expected, it read. My stomach dropped as I realized how quickly everything was spiraling out of control. Jake must have sensed my tension because he stepped back, concern etched on his face. Emily, he asked softly, searching my eyes for answers I didn't have. What's wrong? My husband is coming home late, I replied with a shaky breath. The truth hung heavy between us like an impending storm cloud threatening to burst at any moment. Maybe we should talk later then, he suggested reluctantly, his disappointment palpable in the air around us. But as much as I wanted to agree for practicality's sake, something deep inside urged me to push forward despite the risks. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with my conviction. I need to understand what this is between us. Jake's expression shifted from uncertainty to determination as he nodded slowly. We both knew we were treading dangerous waters but couldn't deny our attraction any longer. After exchanging one last lingering look filled with promise and fear alike, we parted ways, each heading back into our separate lives for now, but knowing this wasn't over yet. That evening felt like an eternity as I waited for my husband's return home. My mind raced with thoughts of Jake and what lay ahead, every potential outcome weighing heavily on me like stones in my pocket. When Mark finally walked through the door hours later, fatigue etched across his face from work stress that seemed never-ending, he greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek before heading straight into the kitchen without noticing how tense I had become. "Dinner smells good," he said absent-mindedly while rummaging through cabinets looking for something to snack on before dinner was ready. "Thanks," I replied quietly, trying to focus on preparing our meal rather than letting guilt consume me entirely. As we sat down together at the table, a familiar routine that once brought comfort now felt suffocating. I struggled against thoughts of Jake invading every corner of my mind like an unwelcome guest refusing to leave. "So what did you do tonight?" Mark asked casually between bites of food. His question caught me off guard momentarily before panic surged through me like wildfire racing across dry grasslands. "Oh, just some errands," I managed to say while forcing myself not to fidget under his probing gaze. It felt wrong lying so easily when every fiber within screamed otherwise, but there was no other choice now, was there? Mark seemed satisfied enough with my vague answer as conversation drifted toward mundane topics, work updates and weekend plans. But even those discussions couldn't keep my thoughts from drifting back toward Jake's confession earlier that night or how exhilarating yet terrifying it all felt combined together in one tangled mess of emotions swirling inside me, constantly threatening chaos at any moment if left unchecked. Later that night, after Mark fell asleep beside me, his steady breathing creating an oddly comforting rhythm, I found myself wide awake staring into darkness, contemplating everything that had transpired over recent days. It felt surreal, almost like watching someone else's life unfold before their very eyes instead of living it myself, fully aware choices made would ripple outward, affecting more than just myself alone. Suddenly another buzz interrupted my thoughts. This time it wasn't Mark's phone but rather mine, lighting up beside me, illuminating dimly enough, revealing another message waiting patiently for attention. This time coming from Jake again, asking simply, "Are you still awake?" My heart raced anew reading those words, igniting excitement mixed with dread all over again. What did he want? What would happen next? Did we truly dare take this leap together, or would it only lead further down paths filled only with regret? Taking a deep breath, steeling myself against uncertainty ahead, I typed back quickly, hoping clarity lay somewhere hidden beneath layers built up over years spent suppressing desires long denied. Yes. But just as soon as those two letters were sent off into unknown territory awaiting response, the weight began pressing harder than ever before threatening collapse beneath its sheer magnitude, leaving nothing behind except echoes, remnants lost forever in shadows cast by choices made long ago leading here today. The night air felt electric as I stepped out of the car, my heart racing. I had crossed a line, one that was both thrilling and terrifying. My brother-in-law waited just a few feet away, his silhouette outlined against the stars. The thrill of secrecy enveloped us like a warm blanket, yet guilt gnawed at my insides. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, unable to find my voice. We had shared secrets earlier, but this felt different, more profound. The vulnerability between us was intoxicating, yet it also left me feeling exposed and ashamed. As we leaned closer together under the vast sky, I felt an overwhelming urge to confess everything, the guilt, the shame, and the fear of what we were doing. But all that came out was a shaky breath as I looked into his eyes. Suddenly, a loud crash in the distance shattered our moment. We jumped apart instinctively, our hearts racing for reasons beyond just the thrill of our rendezvous. "What was that?" he asked, scanning the surroundings with concern etched on his face. My mind raced back to my husband. Was he coming back? Panic surged through me as I realized how easily everything could unravel in an instant. The weight of our choices hung heavily in the air between us. I don't know," I stammered, glancing around nervously. The world outside felt suddenly hostile and unwelcoming. We both stood frozen for a moment before he reached out and took my hand again, his grip firm yet reassuring amidst the chaos swirling around us. We should go, he suggested gently but firmly. We can't risk being seen. I hesitated for only a second before nodding in agreement, every fiber of my being screamed to run away from this dangerous path we were on. As we climbed back into his car, the cramped space felt simultaneously suffocating and intimate under the starlit sky. It was here that we shared more than just stolen glances. We exchanged dreams and fears in hushed tones that seemed to echo against the metal walls surrounding us. "Do you think this is wrong?" he asked quietly after a long pause filled with tension. His question hung heavy in the air between us like an uninvited guest at dinner. I wanted to scream yes, but instead found myself whispering something else entirely. "I don't know anymore," I admitted honestly, feeling tears prick at my eyes as shame washed over me once more. The truth was too complicated for simple answers. Every moment spent with him made me feel alive yet hollow inside. Just then, another noise broke through our conversation, a car door slamming nearby followed by footsteps approaching quickly. Fear gripped me tightly as realization struck. It could be anyone, my husband or someone else entirely who would expose our secret. "We need to hide," I urged him urgently as adrenaline kicked in once again, fueling my instincts for survival over desire. He nodded sharply before quickly shifting into gear and pulling away from where we had parked just moments earlier, our sanctuary now transformed into a potential trap waiting to ensnare us both in its web of consequences. As we drove deeper into the night, leaving behind what could have been a magical moment turned chaotic nightmare behind us, I couldn't shake off an unsettling feeling creeping up within me, like shadows lurking just beyond sight waiting patiently for their chance to strike when least expected. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow that felt both comforting and suffocating. I lay there, wrestling with the weight of my choices. Last night replayed in my mind like a haunting melody, every whisper, every touch. Guilt gnawed at me relentlessly, and I knew I had to face the reality of my actions. When I finally mustered the courage to get out of bed, the house was eerily quiet. My husband had left for work early, as usual. The absence of his presence felt heavy. It was a reminder of what I had done and what I had to hide. As I moved through the familiar spaces of our home, everything felt different. The kitchen smelled of stale coffee and yesterday's breakfast, but it brought me no comfort. I busied myself with mundane chores, trying to distract my mind from spiraling thoughts. Just as I finished washing the dishes, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from him, the brother. "Can we talk?" The word sent a jolt through me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, yet another part longed for connection despite the chaos we had created. My heart raced as I contemplated my response. "Yes," I typed back before I could second-guess myself. The guilt washed over me anew as if it were a tide threatening to pull me under. Just then, the front door swung open unexpectedly. My husband stood there with an expression that made my stomach drop. "Hey. You're home early," I stammered, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. He studied me for a moment too long. "I forgot my laptop," he said slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly as if searching for something hidden beneath the surface. "Everything okay?" His question hung in the air like an accusation. "Yeah, just busy with work," I replied too quickly, hoping to deflect any suspicion he might have. As he walked past me towards his office, dread settled in my chest like a stone. My phone vibrated again. It was another message from him, "Meet me at the diner." My pulse quickened at the thought of sneaking away while he was just down the hall. "Emily?" My husband's voice broke through my thoughts like glass shattering on concrete. "Yes?" He stepped into view again, looking concerned. "You seem off today." "I'm fine," I insisted, though it felt like a lie wrapped in desperation. He nodded but didn't seem convinced and turned back towards his office. As soon as he disappeared from sight, panic surged within me at the thought of meeting him again, the brother who had turned everything upside down in such a short time. I stood frozen for a moment before making up my mind. I needed clarity about what this all meant for us, or rather what it meant for me alone in this tangled web of emotions and choices. The diner was just around the corner, a familiar place where we often grabbed breakfast on lazy weekends. As soon as I walked in, nostalgia hit me hard, memories flooded back of laughter and shared moments over pancakes and coffee. But now it felt different, charged with anticipation and anxiety. I spotted him seated at our usual booth near the window, looking both handsome and troubled. His eyes met mine with an intensity that almost made me forget everything else around us. "You came," he said softly as I slid into the seat across from him. "I almost didn't," I admitted truthfully while glancing around nervously to ensure no one we knew would see us together. "We need to talk about last night," he said cautiously, leaning closer as if sharing secrets meant only for us. "I know," I whispered back, feeling exposed under his gaze yet drawn deeper into this connection that seemed impossible yet so real at once. Just then, our waitress approached with her notepad ready to take our orders but paused when she noticed our tense expressions. An awkward silence enveloped us all before she cleared her throat and asked for our drinks instead. "Coffee for both?" He smiled at her nervously while glancing at me briefly before returning his attention back to her notes without waiting for my answer. Once she left us alone again, tension thickened around us like smoke filling an empty room, suffocating yet strangely intoxicating at once. "I can't keep doing this," I confessed finally after several moments stretched into eternity between us filled only by unspoken words hanging heavily in air around us. He reached across the table instinctively. Our fingers brushed against each other lightly but electrifyingly enough that it sent shivers down my spine despite everything else swirling inside my head clamoring against this very act itself. This forbidden connection we shared now threatening to consume whatever remained of normalcy within either one of us, still holding on to hope amidst chaos unfolding around us all too quickly without warning or reason why either should feel guilty about wanting more than what life offered thus far together apart from one another altogether, even though we knew better than allowing ourselves any further entanglements beyond mere friendship shared between family members alone without crossing lines drawn far too close already. Given circumstances surrounding relationships existing beyond mere blood ties binding them together forevermore, no matter how much they tried resisting fate's hand guiding them forward toward unknown futures awaiting discovery ahead. Just beyond horizon waiting patiently out there somewhere still hidden away from view entirely. "I don't want you to regret anything," he murmured softly after another pause filled only by silence echoing throughout empty space between two hearts beating wildly against walls built up around them, protecting fragile souls yearning desperately reach out towards something greater than themselves alone ever could hope achieve without risking everything, lost a long way, perhaps leading nowhere good, ultimately leaving behind nothing worth remembering later down line someday when reflecting back upon choices made during fleeting moments spent together amidst uncertainty lingering nearby, always threatening disrupt whatever fragile peace they managed create until now, somehow still holding strong despite odds stacked high against them both. But deep down inside, I knew regret would come eventually, regardless how carefully planned each step taken moving forward together might be crafted, a long path chosen leading toward uncertain destinations awaiting discovery ahead, filled potential danger lurking just beyond reach waiting patiently strike when least expected, catching unaware those daring venture forth into unknown territory where few dared tread before risking everything, lost forevermore if not careful enough, navigating treacherous waters filled, perilous currents pulling beneath surface, hiding dangers unseen lurking just below surface, waiting strike unsuspecting victims unaware until too late, realizing truth behind facade presented before them all along, hidden truths buried deep beneath layers, deception crafted carefully designed protect fragile hearts yearning desperately connect regardless cost incurred, trying hold on to fleeting moments shared between two souls longing find solace within arms each other, even knowing consequences faced ultimately would lead nowhere good. I stood in the kitchen, the aroma of last night's dinner still lingering in the air. My heart raced as I glanced at my phone, the text from my brother-in-law echoing in my mind. "Can we meet again?" The weight of his words was heavy, a reminder of the choices I had made that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Just then, my husband walked into the room, his casual demeanor contrasting sharply with my inner turmoil. "What are you doing?" he asked, eyeing me suspiciously as I stirred a pot of leftover soup. I forced a smile, trying to maintain normalcy. "Just cleaning up," I replied, my voice steady despite the chaos within me. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "I was thinking we should plan a family outing soon, maybe this weekend? Both brothers can join." My stomach dropped at the thought of facing him and my brother-in-law together after what had happened. "That sounds nice," I managed to say, though my mind raced with conflicting emotions. As he continued discussing potential plans, guilt washed over me like a cold wave. I thought about how much had changed in just a few days. The laughter shared with my brother-in-law felt like a betrayal now. Suddenly overwhelmed, tears pricked at my eyes. "Emily?" My husband's voice snapped me back to reality. "Are you all right?" I nodded quickly, wiping away any hint of emotion before it could spill out. "Just tired," I lied. He seemed unconvinced but let it go for now. As soon as he left the room, I took a deep breath and glanced at my phone again. There it was, the message waiting for me like an unspoken promise. I stepped outside onto the balcony for some fresh air, hoping to clear my mind. The city lights twinkled in the distance as I contemplated what to do next. Should I meet him again? My heart raced at the thought. Part of me craved that connection while another part screamed for restraint. The sound of footsteps interrupted my thoughts as my husband joined me outside. "I thought you could use some company," he said softly, leaning against the railing beside me. The moment felt intimate yet suffocating. I struggled to breathe amidst conflicting emotions. "Do you ever feel like life is just complicated?" I asked suddenly, not knowing where that question came from but needing to break through the tension hanging between us. He looked thoughtful for a moment before replying, "Sometimes it feels like we're all just trying to keep our heads above water." His gaze drifted into the distance as if searching for answers himself. The conversation lingered uncomfortably in the air until he finally broke it with a gentle touch on my shoulder, a gesture meant to comfort but only deepened my guilt further. Later that evening, alone in bed, I stared at the ceiling while replaying our conversations over and over in my mind. My phone buzzed beside me. It was another text from him, "Can't stop thinking about you." My heart raced at his words. They pulled me closer into an abyss I wasn't sure how to escape from. In that moment of weakness, temptation won out over reason once more as I typed back, "Me too." A thrill surged through me when he replied almost instantly, "Let's meet tomorrow." As sleep finally claimed me that night, visions of what could be danced through my mind, each one accompanied by guilt that gnawed at my conscience relentlessly. Morning light filtered through our bedroom window when reality hit hard once more. The weight of what lay ahead pressed down on me like an anchor pulling me into dark waters where escape seemed impossible now that I'd ventured too far beyond safe shores. After breakfast with my husband, filled with small talk and forced smiles, I felt hollow inside. Each bite tasted bland. Every laugh felt rehearsed and empty as if we were playing roles in a tragic play neither one wanted to be part of anymore. When he left for work later that day without suspicion lingering in his eyes, a small relief, I grabbed my keys and headed out toward our usual diner down the street instead of facing another lonely afternoon at home alone with only thoughts spiraling out control around guilt gnawing away inside constantly reminding me how wrong everything felt now compared. Last week when blissful ignorance shielded reality from view entirely obscuring consequences lurking just beneath surface waiting strike. Unexpectedly catching unaware those daring venture forth into unknown territory where few dared tread before risking everything lost forevermore if not careful enough navigating treacherous waters filled perilous currents pulling beneath surface hiding dangers. unseen lurking just below surface waiting strike unsuspecting victims unaware until too late realizing truth behind facade presented before them all along hidden truths buried deep beneath layers deception crafted carefully designed. Protect fragile hearts yearning desperately connect regardless cost incurred trying hold on to fleeting moments shared between two souls longing find solace within arms each other even knowing consequences faced ultimately would lead nowhere good. Sitting at a corner booth nursing coffee while glancing outside lost in thought brought clarity amidst chaos swirling around inside head reminding why choices mattered most. Every decision carried weight influencing lives intertwined irrevocably entwined forevermore whether wanted or not shaping futures ahead uncertain filled potential danger lurking just beyond reach waiting patiently strike when least expected catching unaware. Those daring venture forth into unknown territory where few dared. Tread before risking everything lost forevermore if not careful enough navigating treacherous waters filled perilous currents pulling beneath surface hiding dangers unseen lurking just below surface waiting strike unsuspecting victims unaware until too late. Realizing truth behind facade presented before them all along hidden truths buried deep beneath layers deception crafted carefully designed protect fragile hearts yearning desperately connect regardless cost incurred trying hold on to. Fleeting moments shared between two souls longing find solace within arms each other even knowing consequences faced ultimately would lead nowhere good. I stood there, my heart racing as I stared at the brother. The weight of my choices pressed heavily on my chest. I felt like a deer caught in headlights, frozen in place, while the world around me continued to spin. My mind raced with thoughts of what would happen next. Would I confess everything to my husband? Or would I allow myself to be swept away by this dangerous connection? Emily, he said softly, breaking the silence that hung between us. What do we do now? His eyes searched mine, filled with a mix of hope and fear. I don't know, I replied, feeling the tension crackle in the air. I can't keep lying. The thought of my husband returning home at any moment sent chills down my spine. I glanced around, half expecting him to appear out of nowhere. The brother reached for my hand, his touch igniting a spark within me that I couldn't ignore. Let's get away for the weekend, he suggested suddenly, his voice low and urgent. We could go somewhere no one knows us. My heart raced again, not with excitement but with dread. Could I really leave everything behind? The idea was intoxicating yet terrifying at the same time. What about everything here? I asked, uncertainty lacing my words. Just think about it, he urged, stepping closer. We could have a fresh start. In that moment, I realized something profound. I couldn't escape my feelings for him. They were real and undeniable, tugging at me like a lifeline amidst a stormy sea. But then a sudden noise shattered our fragile bubble, a car door slamming nearby. Panic surged through me as I turned to look down the street where we had met in secret. My heart sank when I saw my husband's familiar figure approaching us from the direction of our home. What are you doing here? I whispered frantically. I wanted to surprise you, he said casually, but there was an edge in his voice that hinted at something deeper, suspicion perhaps? My pulse quickened as he drew nearer. The brother stepped back instinctively, his expression shifting from hope to alarm in an instant. I should go, he murmured, casting one last lingering glance at me before retreating into the shadows. Emily? My husband's voice cut through the darkness as he reached me. Who were you talking to? I felt cornered now, a rabbit trapped by two predators, one who loved me and one who stirred something forbidden within me. Just someone from work, I stammered, hoping it sounded believable. He narrowed his eyes slightly but didn't press further. Instead, he took my hand and led me towards our home. As we walked back together under the dim streetlights, dread settled heavily in my stomach like a stone. Inside our house, normalcy enveloped us like a warm blanket. The smell of dinner still lingered faintly in the air despite its absence on the table now cleared away after our earlier meal together with family. Are you okay? he asked gently once we were inside. Yeah, just tired, I replied too quickly. It felt like an obvious lie even as it left my lips. He studied me for a moment longer than necessary before nodding slowly and heading towards the kitchen again to pour himself a glass of water while I leaned against the wall trying to calm my racing heart. As minutes ticked by uncomfortably in silence between us, my mind replaying every moment spent with his brother, I couldn't shake off that gnawing guilt threatening to consume me whole if discovered what had transpired between us outside just moments ago. Suddenly realizing how easy it would be for everything to unravel if given enough time or chance, I decided then and there, no more lies, no more secrets, but could it really be that simple? Just as those thoughts settled into place within me, my phone buzzed on the counter beside where I'd left it earlier during dinner. Glancing down at its screen revealed another message from him, the brother, asking if we could meet again soon. My breath hitched at those words alone. They ignited both excitement and fear all over again while simultaneously reminding me how precarious this situation had become. Who's texting you? My husband asked, suddenly breaking through my reverie as he came back into view holding his glass filled halfway with water, now staring directly at me, expectantly waiting for an answer that refused to come forth easily enough without betraying myself further still. It's just work stuff, was all managed finally after what felt like eternity, trying desperately maintain composure under pressure mounting steadily around us both, now suffocating slowly yet surely. But deep down inside, a part wanted desperately scream out loud, confess everything right then and there, hoping against hope somehow things would turn out all right despite consequences looming large overhead, ready strike without warning when least expected, catching unaware those daring venture forth into unknown territory where few dared tread before risking everything lost forevermore if not careful enough, navigating treacherous waters filled, perilous currents pulling beneath surface, hiding dangers unseen lurking just below surface, waiting strike unsuspecting victims unaware until too late, realizing truth behind facade presented before them all along, hidden truths buried deep beneath layers, deception crafted carefully designed protect fragile hearts, yearning desperately connect regardless cost incurred, trying hold on to fleeting moments shared between two souls, longing find solace within arms each other even knowing consequences faced ultimately would lead nowhere good. But instead, I simply smiled weakly back at him, hoping beyond reason maybe this time things wouldn't spiral out control quite so fast. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air as I stood there, caught between two worlds. My husband, oblivious to the storm brewing within me, continued his conversation with his brother. I could feel my heart racing, a cacophony of guilt and desire battling for dominance. The night had taken a turn I never anticipated, and now I was left to grapple with the fallout of my choices. "Are you okay?" my brother-in-law whispered, stepping closer. His presence was both comforting and dangerous. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a genuine expression. The tension between us crackled like electricity, and I could sense the unspoken words hanging in the air. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my husband, emergency at work. Be home soon. My stomach dropped. This was my chance to escape the suffocating atmosphere of this family dinner before it spiraled further out of control. But as I glanced up at my brother-in-law, I saw a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. "I need to go," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "Wait," he replied urgently. "Let's talk for a minute." His tone was insistent, and against my better judgment, I followed him outside onto the dimly lit balcony where city lights twinkled like distant stars. The cool night air brushed against my skin as we leaned against the railing. "I can't stop thinking about you," he confessed, his voice low and earnest. What we shared, it meant something. A part of me wanted to deny it, to push him away and cling to the life I had built with my husband. But another part, a more reckless part, yearned for connection, for understanding that transcended familial boundaries. "Why does it have to be so complicated?" I murmured, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "I don't know," he replied softly, reaching out to wipe away a tear that had escaped its confines. In that fleeting moment, our worlds collided again as our lips brushed together in an impulsive kiss that ignited everything inside me, a reminder of what we had done before. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps shattered our fragile bubble. My husband emerged from the house just as we pulled apart. "What's going on here?" he asked sharply, his brow furrowed with suspicion. I felt panic rise within me as I searched for words that wouldn't betray us both. "We were just getting some fresh air," I stammered awkwardly. His gaze shifted between us before settling on me with an intensity that made me squirm under scrutiny. "You look upset," he said slowly, studying my face closely as if trying to decipher hidden truths written across it. "I'm fine," I insisted too quickly, but even as I said it, doubt crept into my mind, doubt about whether this charade could last much longer without unraveling completely. After what felt like an eternity of silence filled only by distant city sounds and muted conversations from inside the house, he finally nodded and turned back toward the door, but not without casting one last wary glance over his shoulder at us both. As soon as he disappeared back inside, relief washed over me momentarily until reality crashed down again like an avalanche. What would happen next? My brother-in-law's expression mirrored mine. Confusion mixed with fear lingered in his eyes. "We can't keep doing this," I whispered urgently before glancing back toward where my husband had just gone. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to end this madness while there was still time left before everything collapsed around us. But then came another unexpected twist. The sound of sirens filled the night sky, abruptly cutting through any semblance of calmness remaining within our lives outside those walls surrounding us, now filled with secrets hidden beneath layers upon layers, carefully crafted facades protecting fragile hearts yearning desperately connect regardless cost incurred, trying hold on to fleeting moments shared between two souls longing find solace within arms each other, even knowing consequences faced ultimately would lead nowhere good. "What's happening?" he asked sharply as we both turned toward where flashing lights illuminated shadows dancing along nearby streets. My heart raced again. Something terrible must have happened for emergency vehicles to be racing through our neighborhood at this hour. "I don't know," was all I could manage in response. But deep down inside me lay an unsettling feeling gnawing away, relentlessly urging caution, whispering warnings about how precarious our situation truly was, now teetering dangerously close edge cliff, threatening plunge headfirst into darkness below if not careful enough, navigating treacherous waters filled perilous currents, pulling beneath surface, hiding dangers unseen lurking just below surface, waiting strike unsuspecting victims unaware until too late, realizing truth behind facade presented before them all along. Just then another message pinged on my phone. It was from an unknown number. "I know what you did." My breath caught in my throat as dread settled over me like a heavy blanket, suffocating any hope left within grasp. This wasn't just about us anymore. It had become something far bigger than either one of us could have ever anticipated.